Hello and welcome back to the Huron-Clinton Metro Parks Virtual Soil Series. My name is Josh. It's great to get a chance to talk with you all again. Last time we talked about the abiotic ingredients in soil, things like our rocks, our water, and our air that aren't alive and never were alive. But today we're going to talk about the biotic components of soil, things that are alive or that used to be alive, like the green plant and the dead leaves from our soil soup recipe. Abiotic factors are really important because they're like the foundation of an ecosystem, especially when that ecosystem is new. It's the abiotics that are going to determine what's going to come and live there. And the first living things that show up in a new ecosystem are usually smaller critters that are really hardy. They can deal with challenging conditions. They're going to be things like mosses, lichens, and insects, maybe like you've seen crawling around on bare rock outside when you go out. And as these things live, they're going to produce a lot of waste, and eventually they're going to die. And their waste and their remains are going to go through what's called decomposition. Decomposition is when we break these things down into smaller parts and return their nutrients to the soil. It's really not that different from when rocks get weathered into smaller and smaller pieces. And decomposition isn't something that just magically happens on its own either. We're really dependent on decomposers, living things that when they eat, when they take in energy, are returning the nutrients from their food back into the soil. There are three main kinds of decomposers that we're going to talk about, and you can remember them with the acronym FBI. That stands for fungi, bacteria, and invertebrates. Fungi are things like mushrooms and molds, and even though some people think of them as being plants, there's actually a lot of differences. We also have our bacteria, incredibly small germs that we can't really see without a microscope, but are everywhere. And then our invertebrates. Invertebrates are the things like the bugs or the shellfish in an underwater ecosystem, or maybe earthworms. And we owe a lot to these things because they keep recycling the nutrients. They make sure that there's always stuff available for plants to grow. So I thought it might be a good idea for us to do an activity to learn about bugs, insects, and how different parts of their body help them conduct decomposition. Okay, in this activity, what we're going to do is we're going to build our own model of an insect so that we can learn about how they do their job as decomposers. I'm going to build mine out of some natural materials that I found around the park. I was careful not to get anything that's still alive, and I'm going to make sure I put them back where they came from when I'm done with them. You can build your own bug out of things in your schoolyard or around your home. Otherwise, you could build one out of crafting materials too. And there are three main parts of a bug's body that we're going to start with. The first one is the head. The head is really important because it's where the mouth parts are. It's how the bug is actually going to eat and get in the things that it needs to decompose. The second major part of an insect's body is the thorax. The thorax is where the legs attach. If a bug has wings, it's where the wings are going to attach. So the thorax is all about movement and helps a bug find the things that it needs to eat and decompose. And then finally, we have our abdomen, which is where the digestion happens. It's where the insect is going to get the energy that it needs, and then everything else is going to get turned into nutrients and left behind in the insect's waste. We need to go back and add a couple of other things as well so our insect can do its job, starting with 3 pairs of legs. We're going to attach them to the thorax so that our insect can crawl around and find some food and give us plenty of nutrients in our ecosystem. We're also going to add a set of antennae to the head. These are sensory organs. Just like we have 5 senses, sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. Bugs have senses as well, and the antennae are going to help them do that. And then we'll add 2 pairs of wings. And not every insect has wings or even has 2 pairs. Some only have 1. But this is a great way of building the most general and also imaginary insect that we can. Take a second and get a look at your insect, maybe give it a name or show it to someone who's nearby. When decomposers eat something, they change it and break it down, really not all that different from how our rocks got weathered by the glacier, into things that are really small and more accessible for plants. They return those nutrients back into the soil. You might be familiar with composting. Composting happens when you have a really healthy community of fungi, bacteria, and invertebrates that you make sure you feed with your food scraps. You might remember me saying that it can take anywhere from 100 to 1,000 years to make 1 inch of topsoil in a natural ecosystem. But with good composting, you can get that number down to a year, a few months, or really even just a few weeks. It's an incredible thing to watch and do, and something you could try at home if you wanted to. In our next video, we're going to take all this knowledge that we've built up about soil and talk about why it's so important and why it matters for people. Until then, why don't you think of that same question and see if you can come up with a guess of your own. I'd also really be interested if you all could think about what it would be like if we lived on a planet without decomposers, and if you think there would be any way for living things to get the nutrients they need and keep the nutrient cycle going. Really glad I got a chance to talk with you all. Can't wait to see you again.